Thank you guys. Mahalo for having me here. Let's get off my chest. I'm getting all these Goodwill Hunting texts. Just tell them, how's them apples? So I'm like, I'm not at Harvard. I'm presenting at Harvard. It's different. I couldn't get in if I wanted to. But my name is Kamwala Inos. I am Native Hawaiian. I'm from the community at Albi. Has spoken about, I'm from the community of Waianae. I'm currently the Director of Social Enterprise at Ma'o Organic Farms. And I'm really jet lagged, sorry. Quick background, I was born and raised in the community that I work in. My father and my parents are activists, and they were part of a return to the land movement that happened in the 60s that mirrored what was going on globally. We really tried to understand how do we reclaim our identity, because as you grow up in Hawaii, how many of you know anything about Hawaii that isn't silly or goofy or tacky? So I thought, there's a purpose for that, because as the plantation economies fell, tourism began to rise. And when tourism rises, it creates what I've learned in planning school. I went on and dropped out of high school, then went back and got my master's in urban and regional planning. There's this term called simulacra, which is the exact representation of something that never existed. And our lands and our culture got marketed in ways that was complete bullshit. So everyone knows this real goofy stuff about us. So hopefully you can actually say, I heard a real Hawaiian from Waianae. If you know somebody from Hawaii, you say you talk to somebody from Waianae, they're going, oh, okay, legit. So that's my dad. This is the history we're from. And this is, I would call my third parent. This is Ka'ala Farms, where we were raised. And they went and occupied land, and they brought water down. My dad was Native Hawaiian, but he also was a college student, because my grandparents were both blue-collar workers, saved to have him go to college. And he became an artist. So throughout this talk, I'm trying to make it quick. I have 3 younger brothers, and one of them is an artist. And I'm going to use a lot of his artwork to kind of represent what we were raised with, and kind of tie in a little bit about who we are before I talk about our work. Because who's really going to talk about Ma'o is my boss is a 28-year-old woman. 28, right? 27-year-old woman. And that's the point of pride for me. Like, a Native Hawaiian woman is my boss. So like, I want her to talk about her experience because she's living it. I'm just trying to help facilitate it. So this is like, we talk about the ahupua'a system. This is what it looks like from the top down. And this is right at the top of the watershed, and we brought water back, and we started growing our food again. And I was riding shotgun as like a little 3 or 4-year-old, and my dad was organizing, and I hated it. I was like, I want to just be like a regular kid and watch Scooby-Doo. But he made me do this. And here I am. So, and this is what our ancestors look like, and this was a real important understanding. I'm showing this because this is our staple crop, kalo, and it's being turned into, taro turned into a food crop by pounding it. And by working the land, what that taught me was the big difference between what I was learning about my ancestry through actual practice and where they practiced versus what I heard about what it meant to be a Hawaiian from TVs and growing up in poverty. It was this huge dissonance of like, we're not poor. We're not stupid. We did all these things. Why is this not being taught in our schools? So like we look back, and what we learned about in our ancestral practices is first that we were integrated into the landscape. You see that what he's holding, it looks exactly like this. That's what they look like. And ancestral industry, because it was non-monetary and it took place in the space of an island, where the work began and the ecology ended was hard to tell, because they created a mutual type of growth. You needed the land to be healthy to survive. And we lived 2,000 miles from the nearest landmass. We had to exist indefinitely with what we had or die. So our landscapes were tied into our work. The second was, this was the context of we worked. This is a big picture of ahupua'a. You see the fish pond in the front, and it goes all the way back up to the valley. Within that valley, a group of families had to be completely self-sufficient. We didn't trade outside of the bounds of our valleys. That was considered bad taste. It's like, you don't have enough. What do you need other people to give you stuff for? So there's a bunch of families working in the context of an ecology, and that was captured in our spirituality. That valley walls were the same thing as a family member. And ancestral practice, I'll talk about that shortly, our chants talk about us being related to the land. The land is the sentient ancestral person. and that we have to live under and live under the context. So we didn't see a differentiation between our workforce and our ecology and our family and our ecology. They were the same thing. They had a deep intrinsic link to each other. But now this is where we live. You don't see this on TV. You're not going to probably, unless you watch Hawai'i 5-0, they're trying to get more gritty. So this is kind of our community. We have a huge homeless population. If you read the guidebooks, they say don't go to Waianae. Beaches are nice, but leave after that. Because pushed all the Hawaiians here, we're kind of mad at you. And the reality is it's really hard living here. And like the dissonance between working with my dad and then going to school with my peers ended up that I found that someone sent it to me. I dropped out of high school, but right before I dropped out with a class picture, and I'm holding the sign that says die. I was like, my parents was an activist. I had all these opportunities, but I just could not reconcile what I was seeing in my father's practice than what I would see in my own community. And I was just like, I was a punk rocker. I'm still a punk rocker, but I was like, this doesn't make sense fundamentally. And I was kind of like really torn. So I dropped out of high school. Luckily, I had supports, and I went to college. And going to college was when things started to make sense for me. And my brother did this picture. That's when he tried to capture what it was like in our world, in the right and the left. And when they removed us from the land, if you understand how things work in a symbiosis, you can't remove one without impacting the other. And the removal of us from the land impacted the land, but impacted the people. And we learned this thing called poverty. We learned how to be poor. And now we have less in common with the ancestors and more in common with American poverty. What you see in the inner cities, in the Appalachian, like any place where people who are poor and are pushed, we share a lot of commonalities now. But within that person on the right, we have the person on the left. That's the same person. That's the same opportunity. And the whole point of our college experience, especially in indigenous studies, is like, how do we get there from here? We can talk about one, and the diagnosis isn't a cure. We can understand what the problem is. What's the solution? So this is my master's thesis. It was basically, there's a word in Hawaiian called mo'okuoho, which means genealogy. So I did the genealogy of the word sustainability. We do our genealogies as chants. I tried to figure out, where does this word come from? Because I see a whole bunch of people talking about things my ancestors did, acting like they just invented it. And I was pissed. So I was like, what do I do with that feeling? And I did a research, and my paper kind of looked at the spiritual root of that word, and it went back to the Old Testament. This is what the intent was, to create a new sustainability paradigm based off of traditional land use practices and epistemologies. And in my paper, I found that the literature review says that a lot of Western land use law, the idea comes from the Old Testament idea of dominion. And it's basically an anthropocentric understanding of the world, as it's interpreted. I'm not saying that the writers said that. As it was interpreted, it became an anthropocentric understanding. And that land has no intrinsic value outside of its use to humans. And that kind of went through a lot of the themes. There's no longer a lord and serf type of model. It became global. Even in sustainability, the Brundtland report is to preserve resources for future generations. It talked about the land as a resource, and that was where the rub was. The land as dominion. In traditional practices, I don't want to go too long on this, but our chants tell us we are the youngest sibling on a sentient landscape. And in Polynesian culture, if you're the youngest, it means one thing, right? You shut up and listen. Because if you don't, you're going to starve. You don't have. When was the last time you ever taught a mountain something? Really, I mean, we're not teaching it anything. Our job is to listen and serve and to work within the context of what we're taught. And this was what I figured it was a biocentric understanding. Like, land not only has an intrinsic right to exist, land is your ancestor. And like, pulling that into a contemporary space became a real challenge, because how do you do that in a market economy and private land ownership and all of those types of structures that are around us and be successful? Traditional economy, the major distinction of ancestral economy, we didn't have money. We didn't have like this idea of money. You couldn't find a pre-contact Hawaiian dollar. That was taught to us. Money was captured by the ability to maintain intact biosystems. Like our wealth, that's where our wealth was determined. And the commoners and the land were the capital of the chiefs. And our traditional spirituality kind of reflected this. There was no word for religion or nature in Hawaiian. This idea that you could do something that wasn't spiritual, and this idea that there's this thing outside of what you're doing called nature, was something that if you thought, we probably would have starved to death on the first island we moved to. It didn't make sense to people who had to live within a context of islands. It's a quick dichotomy. I just do this to prove that I went to college, but people wonder, like, did you go to college? Yeah, I used dichotomy and I made charts. Sorry, I'm still loopy from the flight. It's 10 hours, you know. But, you know, and this is generalizing with as much of a broad paintbrush as you want to. But the big thing was it was these models that came in were designed for continents and export to participate in a global supply chain. And value is really captured in what you call a GDP, like in money. Pre-contact structures were designed by people who lived in islands. The people who designed these structures weren't like awesome superhumans or just naturally be gifted. They learned over 3,000 years. So they had to understand, how does this work within the context of an island? And they probably watched their children starve to death. Like, horrible things happen to learn how to live like this. So it was true learning and practice that these ideas came about. So we didn't trade only within the context of ahupua'a, and value was really captured in land, people, and the Ike is the word for knowledge systems, the things that tied them together. Alvin already talked about the post-contact realities. I don't go too much into that. But obviously, it sucked. We got pushed to the borders in our own homeland and became second-class citizens and normalized to poverty. And normalized to other people thinking of us as poor. What I was trying to get to with my paper was, I didn't like any frames of sustainability that was out there, so I used the word that's really important to us as Hawaiians, is aina. It's called that which feeds. People, if you go to Hawaii, they'll say it means land, but really, ai is to eat, and then na is this collective ability for all of us to eat the systems. And how our ancestors, the sustainability model that they used, looked at these 4 strands that they wove together. One was your political rights. You had mana. You had the right to rule. That's what the chiefs fought for. You had the right to have a say in that space. The second, you sustained the right of the natural living systems. The third is you sustained the people, the human societal structures within that system. And the fourth is you sustained the ability to learn and work. I'm super generalized, but I didn't, like, these were the first legs of a table that you couldn't have one without the other. And they were very weighted. And we came up with this term called indigenize. For us, we had to do that. We had to repurpose structures to be vehicles for ancestral principles, because we couldn't break away. Now as Hawaiians, we're Americans too. My iPhone has precious metals that's being mined in China. Like, I flew here, my carbon footprint of flying here is really big, so I am complicit, and I have this understanding, like I have to work within this system as a Native person to change it. The challenges we have is, in at least the indigenous studies, the lexicons we use are still trying to speak, still using English words. And the challenge for us in the English words is like, they tend to force individualism. Rights, money, religion, or my rights, this is my money, this is my religion. And you have these existing in these constructs called nature and culture. And the real weird one, like Hawaiian isn't even our term for ourselves. We don't have ANs. It's what people called us. When we start talking about them in Hawaiian, this is a very different way of seeing the things. There's no word for Hawaiian in rights, but there's a word called kuleana, which means responsibility. You didn't have a right for something that you didn't show a responsibility to. The idea of wealth was money. This was like money. The idea of wealth was water. You couldn't hoard water. Water had to flow. So wealth was something that was transmitted. And aina and ohana are 2 important words because they mean family and landscape. And everything else, the idea of religion, culture, were practiced within your family and its relationship to the land. That's why there's no separate word for it. It only existed in those types of relationships. And the original word for Hawaiian is mauli. Mauli means original or eldest. Like we were the first people here. That's why I love First Nations, because that's a great way to frame it. Yeah, like the first people here, we were doing this already. The thing I found that was pretty funny is that you can't translate, they called us Hawaiian rights activists when we were younger. They called my dad a Hawaiian rights activist. You can't translate that word into Hawaiian. That's how insidious it gets. When you do, it becomes a person that restores their ancestral responsibilities. You're not fighting against the system, you're building one that works alongside it. So I was inside the Fugazi album cover ad. I was like, yay, they understand me. So they talk about a triple bottom line in our work. How much time I got, Albie? Okay. In our work, we try to indigenize a triple bottom line, but we talk about triple pico analysis. And picos are your connections to the world. Your fontanelle is your connection to your ancestors. Your navel is a connection to this generation, and reproductive organs, your connection to the future. So our work of indigenizing has to encompass those three. It has to align with ancestral processes, really explicitly with metrics, not just flowery words, like what explicitly about what you're doing aligns to your ancestors. 2, empowers this generation to have agency, choice and control in their own community. And 3, provides a Kahua Steward platform. I gave this to some students. Provides a platform for future abundance. They have to comply to those 3 if you want to be an indigenous community moving into this space. So I learned that at Ka'ala I talked about, it was a repository for ancestral sciences, technology, and spirituality. I don't say Hawaiian culture anymore. I say ancestral sciences and technologies of integrated biosystems management, and I have them prove me wrong. I went to college. I was a planner. I have a planner friend back there. Take it. And then Mao Organic Farms. I'm going to just close out here. So Mao is a social enterprise located in our community. We're a 24-acre, fully certified organic farm. We are now the largest organic farm on the island of Oahu, both in size and sales. The daily operations are run entirely by our young adults. They put in 20 hours a week on the farm. In exchange for the sweat equity, we provide them a full tuition waiver to college, a starting monthly stipend of $500, and a match savings account. We give them a 3-to-1 power. It's more? That's why Michelle Obama was there. And we ask for a 2.5-year commitment because we graduate them with their associates and move them on to their baccalaureates. And I can go over this later, but we really want to make the call. This is basically the 2 things we track on a daily basis in sales and GPAs. And for us, those are the 2 things that our ancestors track to make sure that their value is foundational. Like, how fit are the people? How abundant is the land? And for people in poverty, a GPA is a way out. And organic farming is a way to make sure that the soil is the most important part, then the farmer, then the crop. So we're aligning to ancestral principles while now cornering markets and creating college degrees. From a Native Hawaiian community, everybody just kind of is written off. So we're kind of like sneak attacking them. And this is like we're aligning in this model. All these students are trying to wonder what to do. The high school is trying to get kids to college. I just made this, so you can tell. But in the way we're aligning it, the schools, college, and ag sector are partners that the school students pass through, that we work in our high schools to get them into college and out into the workforce. And the gray areas is where philanthropy and all of our institutions are now jumping in to support us because we're coming to the table with a model that they can help. We're understanding what they're trying to do with our programs, and we're asking for the resources. I'll go through that real quick. And outcomes, we're trying to get graduates already. Kaui, who you'll meet, has graduated with the program with her baccalaureate and runs it. And now she and me can be here while they're still running a farm back in Waianae. So it's functioning, it's going, the culture is taking root, and our kids are going to college, and they're really being successful on the farm, and allowed us to then create the Bachelor's of Applied Science, where we have Albie. So Albie is now teaching agroecology to kids from our Native Hawaiian kids of our community to help them be in the same space. To normalize this, please start to show what do you do with people who've been dispossessed, and how do we take power again in ways that everyone's benefiting. And when you do that, you kind of bring us back to how it used to be. this idea of restoring abundance of ancestry versus trying to transform our community to save our communities are fine. We just need to get back to how we were in a contemporary context, and that way we have choice and control how we're talking about our destinies. So thank you.
Back to this one, and then we'll go to. Okay. Terrific. Thank you. All right, so what I'd like to do is continue to discuss what my relationship as a faculty member is to this Native Hawaiian organization. So I think it's important to point out that the Native Hawaiian community, organized through Ma'o, worked with the Chancellor of the University of Hawaii system to begin the process of creating an undergraduate degree program that was, by its design, intended to serve the Native Hawaiian community. I was brought in kind of after the fact, but the program was already being created, and then I was hired to flesh out the rest of the curriculum, get it integrated into the University of Hawaii system formally, and begin teaching the classes and doing applied research that, again, serves this community. And so I can't say enough about the positive impact that Ma'o Organic Farms is having on this community. It's an incredibly dynamic model of getting young people who have historically not attended college into college. My role, again, has been to create a program that's based in agroecology, but agroecology, if you're unfamiliar with it, its basis is really the study of traditional farming systems. And what about these traditional farming systems can we glean as Western scientists in terms of what we can apply to the modern agricultural context to enhance this long-term sustainability of farming systems? Let me grab that pointer thing real quick. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to cruise through some details to give you a sense of what I engage these students in terms of the content, and then some of the processes that I think are innovative. I'll just say briefly, I'm trained as a population and community ecologist. I got my PhD from UC Berkeley, and before that I spent nearly 10 years at the Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems at UC Santa Cruz in an organic farmer and gardener training program. So I have both the production side and I have the theoretical ecology side. My intention with this is to integrate the two. To me, learning theory strongly supports the idea that the integration of theory with practice is the way that most people learn well. All right, so let me start with a few key things. Most of you know this. Agriculture is a key global driver of environmental change. It influences everything from our ability to preserve biodiversity to managing nutrients and eutrophication to pesticide exposure to non-target organisms. How we do agriculture has an outsized influence on environmental quality and human health. In our community in West Oahu, you see incredibly high rates of chronic illness. As was pointed out, 130% higher incidence of diabetes in the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community relative to the state average. These are issues of poverty, but they are also issues of a broken food system. As I mentioned, we import over 90% of the food, fertilizer, fuel, and seed that we consume in Hawaii. We are incredibly dependent on imports. So in the context of climate change, in the context of the possibility of some kind of economic disruption to the food supply, we are incredibly vulnerable. At the same time, the economy of Hawaii, as was pointed out, is largely tourism. 700,000 people come through the Hawaiian Islands on an annual basis, and the military. That's the foundation of the Hawaiian economy. We argue that we need to fundamentally change that. Agriculture can be a key vehicle for enhancing economic development opportunities that are culturally appropriate for the local population. But there are some significant structural obstacles that we need to overcome, and that is an element of the curriculum that I engage students in. Just briefly, most of you know this, but this is current information. This is data that's just come out in the last month. So we have already exceeded the upper limit of CO2 in the Earth's upper atmosphere. It is considered to be a safe level at 350 parts per million or lower. We've far exceeded that, and we're on a trajectory, given our fossil energy use, to continue to exceed that. The IPCC suggests that we need to be maintaining CO2 concentrations at or below 350 parts per million. That will keep global temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius. We, again, are not on a trajectory to reach that goal. The IPCC, the last report coming out in 2014, is suggesting that if we are able to maintain global temperatures below 2 degrees of Celsius, then we can perhaps adapt and even mitigate the climate change that we have induced. But if we exceed that and we reach somewhere between 4 degrees or more Celsius of warming, then we're talking about the possibility of catastrophic impacts to global society. This, I'm not going to go into details, but this is in recent modeling coming out of NASA. If you haven't read this, I encourage you to check it out. What they are now predicting is if we do not significantly reduce carbon emissions, that there is an 85% likelihood of a mega drought in the continental United States that could last between 10 and 40 years. That is catastrophic impacts to the agri-food system of the continental United States. All the areas in brown, those are the areas that they're anticipating a long-term drought. That is much of the agricultural infrastructure of the United States. That creates a certain amount of anxiety for me as somebody who lives 2,500 miles from where most of our food comes from. Agriculture is a major culprit. As high as 35% of total global greenhouse gas emissions come from agriculture. If you begin to add up all the contributions from the inputs to the transportation to the refrigeration, et cetera, we're talking about a quarter to 35% of greenhouse gas emissions is coming from the ag sector. And these are the key contributions: deforestation, animal agriculture, et cetera, things most of you know. One of the other elements of the modern agri-food system that you may not be familiar with is the production of synthetic chemical fertilizer. And it poses a number of environmental quality and human health risks. It's incredibly energy intensive. That's one of the reasons that modern industrial agriculture, chemically based agriculture, is so fossil fuel intensive. The Haber-Bosch process requires a significant amount of fossil energy in order to produce the compounds of ammonium nitrate and other fertilizers. At the same time, one of the unintended consequences is as synthetic chemical fertilizer breaks down in the soil, it produces a significant amount of nitrous oxide. And you're seeing a very clear trend in nitrous oxide concentrations coming from the initial application of synthetic chemical fertilizer starting at the advent of the Green Revolution. Nitrous oxide is important because it's a 300-time more potent greenhouse gas than CO2, and it lasts for a very long period of time. Synthetic chemical fertilizer can also fundamentally change plant physiology, making them more susceptible to pests and pathogens. This has been shown repeatedly in the studies. The nature of the way that we conduct agriculture is fundamentally flawed in many ways. The use of intensive tillage, the application of these highly concentrated synthetic chemical fertilizers can lead to soil quality degradation. One of the major reasons that agriculture contributes to greenhouse gas emissions is because we've been mining the carbon out of the soil. Every time we till the soil, we're releasing significant amounts of CO2 from the soil into the atmosphere. But we can reverse that. One of the things that, as we degrade soil quality, it becomes more erosive, and all of those highly soluble nutrients that we're applying in terms of chemical fertilizer, those things can enter our aquatic or marine ecosystems, leading to significant eutrophication and then impacts in terms of biodiversity loss or water quality degradation that poses a risk to human health. Every single one of these dots on this map is a major eutrophication zone or a hypoxic zone, a dead zone as many people refer to them. You see a significant cluster of these in the Gulf of Mexico. This is an agriculture problem. And as we heard this morning, the concentration of corn in the Midwest, soybean production in the Midwest, and all of the CAFOs, these are major culprits in terms of the degradation of water quality. The way that we do agriculture is fundamentally flawed from an ecological perspective, farming as monocultures. It's an ecologically dysfunctional model of growing crops. We're concentrating plant host resources over large tracts of land. We're pumping them filled with synthetic chemical fertilizer, making them more susceptible to pests and pathogens. We're destroying habitat for for beneficial organisms in the process, leading to higher incidences of pests and pathogens. It's a fundamentally flawed model of agricultural production. And of course, when we do these things, we become increasingly reliant on the use of synthetic chemical inputs that pose a significant environmental quality and human health risks. We should know through our understanding of evolution by natural selection that the application of these materials to control pests and pathogens will drive the development of genetic resistance. It's one of the best documented examples of evolution by natural selection that we have. But we have alternatives. People have been studying traditional farming systems, indigenous farming practices all over the world, and have culminated these findings in this field of agroecology. This is a kind of an opposing framework for agriculture. What we tend to do in modern agriculture is simplify the system. We simplify it biologically, and it becomes more dependent upon external inputs, and it becomes something where pest populations tend to break out more frequently. But we can, using our understandings of ecology, increase the biological diversity of the farming systems through farming practices that can enhance populations of beneficial organisms and lead to enhanced pest regulation. And if you study traditional farming systems, including Hawaii, this is what you see. Every single farming society that have endured for any period of time practice largely this set of farming practices, from diversification of crops to the cycling of organic matter to the selection of varieties of crops that perform well in a range of different biophysical conditions. Examples of this exist where modern ecologists have designed farming systems to function on a new set of ecological relationships. This is one from East Africa, the push-pull system. Simple integration of different cropping species to enhance natural pest regulation and reduce the impact of pest populations. So what do we know about these farming systems? When we diversify farming systems, as opposed to the modern model of industrialization and biological simplification of farming systems, we know that wild ecosystems function better. They deliver greater numbers of ecosystem services as they are more biologically diverse. And the same is true with agricultural ecosystems. As we diversify them biologically, they function better in terms of the delivery of a wide range of ecosystem services, from pest control to carbon sequestration to the enhancement of natural pollination services, et cetera. So this is recent work, just to give you a sense of what the literature that we cover in this class, and you should be familiar with also, is we now have about 40 years of empirical work on organic and diversified farming systems. And when you begin to tally up the total set of costs and benefits of organic or biologically diversified farming systems as compared to conventional farming systems, we now see, and we can substantiate this with a deep literature, that organic farming systems, biologically diversified farming systems, or traditional farming systems outperform conventional farming systems across every single environmental performance metric, including profitability. There is still a slight yield differential for reasons that I will explain, but it's important to understand that we now rest on a very strong empirical basis in terms of what types of farming systems are going to deliver the environmental goods in the context of climate change that are going to help us adapt and reduce environmental externalities. I'm just going to provide you with a little bit of context. This is some research that colleagues and I have done. Organic farming systems, as compared to conventional farming systems, as I mentioned, outperform outperform conventional farming systems across a wide range of environmental performance metrics. This is the political economic context of the U.S. Department of Agriculture that has provided the basis of that differential rate of performance. So if you look at this little graph, this shows you how much money goes into organic farming systems research. So a very small fraction of U.S. Department of Agriculture budget goes into developing alternative farming systems. That might be the basis why some organic farming systems underyield. This is recent research that I've published with colleagues at the Union of Concerned Scientists showing the total U.S. Department of Agriculture budget. That's there in the big gray circle to the left. And in the green, you see a very small fraction of the U.S. Department of Agriculture budget that's dedicated to organic farming systems and agroecology. Okay? So despite the overwhelming performance of ecologically based agriculture, it is highly marginalized in the U.S. Department of Agriculture's research portfolio. Last couple things, and then I'll turn it over to Charisse. Okay, so we have this program, it's called Sustainable Community Food Systems. I draw upon the material that I've just covered with you. All of my students need to have an understanding of what are the risks and benefits of conventional and alternative forms of agriculture. It's grounded in the fundamental human right to food, safe, affordable, and culturally appropriate food. These are some of the core courses that we offer through this program. So we have an undergraduate degree concentration in sustainable community food systems. It's highly interdisciplinary, so people understand both the biophysical sciences and they understand what are the economic and political structures that limit our ability to achieve greater ecological sustainability in the food system. So this is a range of courses that we teach. Again, it's highly interdisciplinary. All those listed in red are those that draw upon indigenous science and knowledge and practice. I have my students out in the field studying traditional farming systems while reading about and studying the theoretical literature in the classroom. I'll just cruise along through a few more slides. His experiential education is highly important and a fundamental basis of this program. This is one way that we integrate experiential learning. The chancellor gave us a half-acre of land at the center of campus, and in a 2-year time period, we began to transform this space through classes, through workshops. We were able to build a native Hawaiian hale, which is now becoming a cultural gathering place for many of our students. Students were involved in every aspect of building the garden and the hale. And now today, 2 years later, we have this half-acre site that's been fully built out. Students are involved in community service or service learning in the surrounding community, helping install gardens and working on farms in the surrounding community while studying the basics of applied research in terms of soil quality. And this is what we have today. We have a half-acre, beautiful organic garden site that we've developed through this program. It's also, I think, an important place of gathering, where there is a sense of place on the campus. This is a key element where we're trying to reflect key aspects of the native Hawaiian community, culture, horticulture in this program and on the campus. We bring students out into the community to work with traditional practitioners so that they understand both the theoretical and applied elements of traditional Hawaiian agriculture and horticulture. Okay, I'm just going to pause here, and I think I'll turn it over to Charisse to speak to her experience. Thank you.
Who? Okay, got it. No, I got him. Thank you, Carmen. He still treats me like a baby, even though he calls me a boss. Sounds like a cool line to a rap song. But aloha. So mahalo to Albi and Kamu and you guys for being a part of our presentation. But really what I'm going to be talking about is Kamu kind of touched upon in the end of his section about my organic farm. So I basically grew up through the program. I went there straight after high school. But this is just a shot of a portion of our farm was a nice anui, so a rainbow going across the valley. And, you know, every time we have students, visitors, teachers, anybody come to the farm, I always like to think like we're in this journey together. They're in their journey, I'm in my journey, and there's a reason why we always pass each other. Whether it's just looking at someone's face or getting into a conversation, or you taking what I have to hear or taking what you guys have to offer as well. So this is my feet. Yeah, that's my feet. That's our soil. It's a vertical soil, really rich, old type of soil found in a very young place. Oahu is very young. Mountain, the Kilauea, which is the crater that is still giving out lava, has been pushing out life for the past 30, 40 years. It's been ongoing for a long time. But I always like to question the interns who are a part of our program, and I had this question put onto me, is like, what is your foundation? Yeah, and for many of us in Hawaii, we're blessed. Yeah, we have this opportunity to be in the ocean, and Kamo talked about it, from being Mauka Makai, so from the uplands to the oceans. We have this symbiosis with everything that we're a part of. So growing up, this is the exact beach where, like right over here, that's where I swim all the time, and it's a beautiful space. And then Ka'ala, this is where Kamo pretty much grew up with his family, and this is where they restored the kalo patches. And if they didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to have been in that opportunity and to be in that space as well. So in high school, I got to go up into these mountains and do reforestation projects, to do archaeology projects, and mark all these old terraces, traditional terraces that kalo was grown in. And having that kind of space definitely has grounded me into what I wanted to learn about my ancestors. So you Google Waianae, and like how Kamu said, there's like books that like tell tourists to not go to our side of the island because you don't get beat up, you don't get stuff stolen, and that's the kind of that kind of reputation has been in our community for hundreds of years. So it's not just when the tourism started. You can find old traditional stories where the thieves of Makaha will beat you up and take your food, but that's just a part of like where we grew up and who I am, and it's a beautiful space. It's my high school, my alumni high school. But like how Kamu said, this is our current reality. You get people living in poverty, you get people fighting each other because now we're taken away from the land. There's a separation, so we built up this ego for generations, and we don't know that that's the ego keeping us apart, And so we're named. You can look at Waianae in the newspaper if it has anything to do with drugs, fighting, or stealing. You don't find a lot of the times programs like us in the news because we're known for this kind of stuff, yeah. And we were also, unfortunately, food insecure. Albia said we're importing 90% of our food, so feeding ourselves, and you guys keep hearing this again, has been lost. A practice has been lost to our people. My own native grandmother doesn't know how to grow food, and it's a weight, yeah. And it's like now that we're getting into this time, we're learning about more about my kupuna, and it doesn't make sense. Like how Kam says, it doesn't make sense. Why we were able to feed ourselves, but now we can't. But regardless of these images, thankfully, we have this program called MA'O. It's an acronym from Mala Aiopio. So if you guys write this down or comment us, put it all in acronyms. It's very kind of irritating when it's goes lowercase, because it's really, Mala Aiopio means food youth garden. We're a social enterprise, so for 2.5 years, we have this opportunity to give students from our community to go to LCC, which is a Leeward Community College underneath the University of Hawaii. And then now we extended to going to UH West Oahu. So our tuition waiver is we get a tuition waiver, and when we get a starting stipend at $500. We do start at 5 o'clock in the morning, though. That's why I said that. But your first year, you start at 7 o'clock. So it's you do about 20 hours a week, 3 times a week. And in the production days, I'll get into production. But besides these pictures, this is what our own families see us. This is what our families see us as, the young guys. But with the really good people, the good group that started Ma'o, they seen it as like, why we have almost close to 50% of 25-year-olds and under in our community, and it's like, why aren't we putting these guys to jobs? Not saying to put them into like slave labor jobs, but it's like, they're able, we're young, we can do this physical stuff. We can't have the average age of farmers still being in the 60s and 70s. Like, we're able and capable to do these kind of things. And in the program, so that's me. That's my first year at Ma'o. This is like right after I graduated high school. I still have that beanie too. Wow. Yeah. So in the program, we have the interns come 3 days a week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday is our major production days. This is the days that we harvest, wash, pack certified organic vegetables. We also do things in the internship to we plant fields, we weed fields because we're organically certified. We don't do any chemicals on top our products. And in that program, we also are selling our own products. We don't give it to another person to sell for us. We're the ones owning our vegetables to sell to other people, and we get to work with our peers. And in the program, because we're getting them to go to school and to work on a farm, we believe that the values of hard work and an opportunity of higher education will create leaders in our communities and in their own ohana or in their own family. Sorry, kind of nervous. Harvard, I never thought I would talk at Harvard, to be honest. Thank you. But thank you. No, thank you. Okay. But all we're really trying to do is get these guys prepared for the craziness of the world from their own households. And these are some of the students. So we practice culture protocol. We like to have fun. We grow all these vegetables, like carrots that big in Hawaii. I never thought. Like, when I first started, we were growing carrots like this big, and now we're growing carrots this big. Just because now that I've been in it and I have peers and colleagues working with me that for the past 5 to 7 years, we fine-tuned our practice. We weren't just having somebody teach it to us. We started to figure out the ways for us to be better in ourselves and in our own ways of planting. And that's what our kupunas did. Eventually from Micronesia, when they came all the way to Polynesia, to Hawaii, and then down to New Zealand, we fine-tune our practices to support our people. And that's what we're doing, and that's what we're finding out to do. Like, I'm driving tractors, yay. Like, growing food, yeah, so we got some beautiful food, giving you guys some shots of what we do. So our sassy salad mix of lettuces and all kinds of funky little lettuces, and people love it. That's our favorite salad. Some fresh lemons, some huge-ass beets, some pretty big beets. But in these practices, on the farm, we have some pretty critical morals and things that we go by. So this is Papa Aila. He's a kupuna of our community. He is actually the first guy to come up. He's traditional guy out, just hire the Filipinos for weed, And what Gary and Kukui, the founders of Ma'o, were saying, no, uncle, we're going to do this differently. Yeah. And it took them a little while. They told us, back in the day, it took them a little while to understand what they were trying to do. But once he figured it out, he was our #1 supporter. He was a guy to tell everybody our story of and he always told us, he'll come up to me Bebe, there's only 3 things you need to do for be successful in life. I followed this. My grandfather told me this. This is what I'm going to tell you. The three things you need to do for surviving this world is to love, respect, and have the willingness for work. You do those three things, baby, you're going to survive. And you're going to be successful. And he's a testament to his own saying. This guy went to Vegas all the time. He has a huge family. He had his own house. He ranched our valley before it got sold. Like, he leased and ranched the whole valley. And this guy is really on it. And I never knew my grandparents too much, but he's definitely has been a grandfather to me, even though he's not my blood, and I love him. Aloha aina, malama aina. You guys will probably, if you guys ever go to Hawaii, you guys will probably hear that all the time. Aloha aina, malama aina. But really what aloha aina, malama aina means is, having that relationship with the aina, with the land. You show love and respect to the land will definitely show love and respect to you. And that's the bottom line. Yeah, that's the bottom line that we all should be living by. And then a kupuna of one of our founders, Nehuli Kalima Iluna, Pololi Ka'opu. When your hands are turned up, your stomach will be hungry. Nehuli Kalima Ilalo, Piha Ka'opu. When your hands are turned to the soil, your stomach will be full. This is just a testament more of like, you gotta work hard. Yeah? And we're living in this day where, okay, 3 minutes, got it. We live in this day where we have to be able to get away from the technologies and just do the physical hard work. And that's what I love about the farm. So with this, this is some of our students. We're building and rebuilding Ohana, so we're rebuilding their family values, because some of them come from broken families, really broken families, that kind of like break your heart kind. Like, I don't know how they're even coming to school and going to work. And I applaud them, and they're my inspiration. Vai vai, so Kamal talked a little bit about vai vai, vai vai, so water is vai. Vai vai is plenty water, which means rich. And when you add water, so what I'm finding is that when you're adding, we're refarming the land that hasn't been farmed for probably like 100 years. And what I'm finding is that all these native plants are popping up. So their seed bank is in the soil. And it's just like a metaphor of like, in order for our native children, or our native plants to come about, they just need water. And how we're stopping that water from getting to them, and how are we going to feed them? But seeing like these like native plants pop up, it's just like, there's still life in my aina. There's still life here. We just got to be able to be open and listen to the land. Pu'uhonua, a lot of these guys are looking at this, are feeling this place as a place of refuge, place where they can be safe, place where they can find hope and love where they're not finding in other places in their family. So getting an education, entrepreneurism. We go to the farmer's market, we're selling our own vegetables, we're cooking our own vegetables to share with how we eat our vegetables with other people. And these guys come and they love our group. We're like the young crew, yeah, so we're always like, yeah, yelling, like, no panic, organic, come get your vegetables. And like, it's different. Like when you go to the farmer's market in Hawaii, there's not a lot of that going on. So it's like, oh, these guys are catching attention. So it's kind of dark, but that's a sunrise of the coming up the mountain. Some more pictures, kind of dark, sorry about that. Kind of zip through. But another thing that we are providing for our interns is that we're getting to eat good food now. So we're knowing how to cook good food. So we have, all of this is from the farm. So it's beets, bananas, mixes, kales. We're making our own pesto, doing all kinds of things, getting these guys to able to love good food. And then we're also going to restaurants that are using our stuff. So this is amazing. I'll tell you guys more about it if you guys want to know. We share good food, so we sell to a whole bunch of accounts, wholesale, retail. We have a CSA subscription. We have about 80 members, and it's still growing. We have opportunities for us to go to travel. Some of the places that I got to go through with Ma'o is Italy, Thailand, Aotearoa, New Zealand. Being our own leaders, having some fun, just showing you guys some pictures. Working hard, getting dirty. And fighting for what you believe is pono. Pono meaning that what is right, what is center here, in here, what is settling you to do the right thing. Michelle Obama came because Can you read her quote right here? She heard about us. She wanted to come. Everyone, I just want to announce that I lost that arm wrestling fight. Did you not see her arms? Look at that. A sign of excellence. You guys, I don't know if you guys know, but about Hokulea is a traditional sailing boat that's going around the world. It's a 3-year-long trip. It's like almost halfway through its trip. It's slowly coming back. It's in Florida right now, yeah? It's in Cuba. Oh, in Cuba. It's in Cuba. You can follow them. And continuing this place of ancestral abundance. So even though all the things that I talked about, sorry, I'm going a little bit over time. All the things that I talked about was all the things that we're growing is really just a 21st century context of what our kupunas did. If our kupunas seen the shovel, they would have used the shovel. If they seen the tractor, they would have used the tractor, but use it in a pono way, in a way that values aloha and malama aina, and a relationship between people and food. You know, and we're really, truly doing all of this. You know, this Kamu's kid is Noah for these guys, yeah? It's my baby brother. I want him to enjoy that. I want his kids to enjoy that. And really, this is what we're all about. And some quotes, but I think one thing that really helped me in my journeys was that I got to stay in New Zealand for a month with a mentor, and her partner is Maori, and she told me this quote from her great-grandmother, and she said, on her deathbed, her great-grandmother told her family, "My child, you're only a moment between two eternities, past and future. So hasten and come to the circumstances of your times." We're only a moment between two eternities. There's an eternity before us, and there's an eternity after us. And what am I doing in this point to continue that? Am I adding more to climate change, or am I helping it? Am I giving an opportunity to my baby brother to go to college and eat good food, or am I destroying it? And having those kind of thoughts has helped me to be in the space that I am right now, and to be here with you guys. So mahalo. Thank you.
And I think we just hit the point of our limit. I'm sorry, we had a 10-hour flight, and it's plane ride over, so we had to cram as much in this hour and 20 minutes. But we will be available. I know you guys got to go on to the next point, but catch us. We'll be around to the end of the day. You know, I'm sorry we didn't have as much time for question and answer. And but I think between the three of us, if you want to just grab us someplace and ask questions, I'd be more than willing to do that too, especially if there's beer involved later. Thank you guys for having it. Thank you for everyone who organized this event, for allowing us to come over and to pave the way for Kauai. And I really appreciate you guys' attention. Mahalo.